Thank you for joining us for this very important discussion. In Her Company is a growing platform for women discussing how we create, build, and live. What began as a weekly radio show in 2009 with over 16,000 listens featuring diverse women in business is now a company with an expanded mission to help women answer the question, what's next, create a plan to get it, and birth their huge and possible visions. This mini-series is an expression of our commitment to women to help them to live more powerfully, not only for themselves, but for the greater good of the world around us. And in Wielding Your Voice, we will explore what it means to do so, how to wield the power of our voice at the root causes of issues rather than each other, and we will touch on four key areas: passion, purpose, pain, and responsibility. My name is Chris Vaughn. I am In Her Company's creator and founder. I'm also a published author of fiction featuring strong female characters and a consultant to multi-passionate women. Joining me to discuss pain is Kelly Van Nelson, a poet whose work has been featured in numerous international publications and a prominent figure in media discussing social issues. She is the winner of the AusMumpreneur Big Ideas Changing the World Award for her literary impact as an anti-bullying advocate and Roar Success winner for Best Book and Most Powerful Influencer. Kelly serves as managing director on the executive board of a Fortune 500 human resources organization. She is also a mom of two, and in the spare time she does not have, she hangs out on the open mic performing poetry. Kelly, thank you for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Good to be here.
So, why are you taking part in this discussion?
I think it's just the perfect time to use the voice in a different way, given everything that's happened in the world and people speaking out more about topics they're passionate about, and being less afraid to talk about issues that really matter. And I'm passionate, and there are so many things that I want to make a difference with in the world. Now is the time. So
Yes.
yeah, your show is the perfect vehicle to do this as well, in the sort of whole spectrum that you cover. I thought it was the perfect avenue for me to have a chat with you.
Honored. Thank you so much. So this one is a topic that most people tend to shy away from. And especially when we're new to using our voice, there's a tendency to kind of do therapy from the stage, which is, it's a strict no. So can you share with us what is the difference, or how does it look when we're speaking or using our voice from pain versus using our voice from a point of recovery?
I guess from a pain perspective, your vision is quite clouded, is probably the way that I would describe my personal pain anyway. Your thinking isn't quite as clear as it could be. You're caught up in the emotion of that pain, whatever it may be, whether it be loss, grief, anger, frustration, whatever that pain is. And you're not as clear in your thinking as you might otherwise be. So what you really need to do in that scenario is focus on the pain and your own personal recovery and pathway through that, rather than sort of getting into the negative space that is spiraling out on everybody else. Whereas the recovery piece, I think you have begun to go through that journey, and to a certain extent are coming out the other side, where you can talk a little bit more freely about your own circumstances, but in a more clear manner, sometimes with intent or purpose as well, to help others. And that's a journey in itself, and it's a timing, process to go through. But I think it's a fine line between the two as well. You don't want to get into the point that you're preaching to others or thinking you know everything, because pain is so personal, and every person is different, and everybody's circumstances are different. So to me, pain is first about personal recovery. and then potentially helping others if that's what you really are inclined to do. But it's a
Yeah.
journey.
Oh gosh, yes, yes. I like what you said about finding your own pathway through, you know, because it does. It looks different to everyone, and even though there may be a lot of people in the world who have experienced the same thing, it's unique to you. So how you process that may look totally different than even the person beside you or people who have shared in the same events, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
no two people are the same, and no two households are the same, and it is absolutely a personal emotion and set of circumstances. So yeah, everybody is different, and I think that's the key. If you are talking to someone, is to respect that, and those boundaries that brings, because nobody can know everything about someone else. And I think it's about having conversations that can embrace that and can be helpful to that, and play towards that, rather than trying to sort of talk to somebody that what's happening and it all with their pain and how to get through it, because nobody does.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. You hear a lot, and or it's common today that some tragedy happens, and then the next thing you know, someone wants to start a nonprofit, or someone wants to go on a speaking tour.
Mm.
And while why the intent is honorable, while the desire is honorable, in many cases, anyone looking in on a situation can say, "Oh, it's not time yet. It's not time." So, how do we know when there's been enough distance, if you will, um, that we can think about helping someone else so that we
Mm.
don't continue to, speak from that point in time?
Yeah, I don't know if there's ever really a sort of knowing moment of clarity that says, this is it. I'm going to really go out there and do, and do something in the wider world to help others. I feel like it's a gradual journey to get to that point, and it might be sort of baby steps to get there, actually, with dealing with your pain, and then getting to the point that it can become quite a powerful journey, and a powerful sort of ripple effect in helping others. I personally never had a big eureka moment where I felt, all right, I'm ready, I'm going to get out there and help others. It just sort of, for me, didn't happen that way. I didn't intend or plan to have a career that was sort of helping others. I definitely intended to be a writer. I always wanted to be a writer to help. That was my creative channel to get over my own personal baggage
Mhm.
and problems and pain and anger. And writing for me was the vehicle that I thought was perfect for that. I always wanted to be a writer, and I, from a young age, read everything and was always scribbling something. And I did that for a lot of years personally without sharing it with anyone. And I never, even with the writing, had a eureka moment thinking, all right, I'm going to come out of the closet and tell people I'm writing. It just sort of morphed into a gradual progression of maturing my own thinking and finding different ways of just dealing with things, and then getting the word onto the page that helped me to express different scenarios, sometimes through facts, sometimes through fiction, sometimes through poetry. And bit by bit, with different baby steps, it began to be really healing in ways for me, where I thought, yeah, that's a really good piece of work. I did start to submit and get it out there, and gradually it got a bit of momentum. And over time, I then started talking to people about my own journey and background in a way that before that had been incredibly difficult. I wouldn't even really speak about childhood to anyone. It
Oh,
was
no.
just not something I wanted to share for many years, well into adulthood, actually. I was sort of a real closed book. So the writing helped with that, because I could get it on a page easier than I could speak about it. And then I did begin to speak in schools and in universities and things about how I had sort of begun life as a writer, and also in the corporate world. That was not a gifted journey at all. I worked really hard to get where I am in the corporate world through an unusual pathway. And I think really what's made the difference in getting to the point now that I'm at, where I do speak in quite large forums, but in a different way and different style. It just happened through those different conversations, finding real joy out of seeing a couple of people in the audience that it really resonated with, and I could have a very personal conversation afterwards, or some kind of feeling of resonating going on in the conversation. It began to become really rewarding, and I could feel that I was getting impact in positive ways with others. So I did it more. I did it more and more, and now I've sort of found the way for me to help deal with firstly my pain, but also share it with others, is about being vulnerable, and around not preaching and not thinking that I know it all, but around sharing my personal story. This is what's happened, and this is how I'm dealing with it, and then sharing just ordinary things in life that can be quite special, and different ways to build resilience and find hope. But in a lot of it is around using real live examples in the world that we're in, rather than sort of very prescriptive therapy, or a real
Yes.
set of guidelines or framework. That's not what I do at all. I free flow and
Okay.
let it all out there in a different kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. You said, and sharing pain with others, because we think of sharing meals, sharing gifts, sharing great times. And it's like, who the heck wants to share pain? Because there's a part of us, we understand that life can be unpredictable. We know that life can be messy, but messy for someone else. And we know that there are things that are very painful. And I'm including traumatic in that for the sake of our discussion, that happens to us, but we don't share those things because
Mm.
a part of us believes it's like, I'm so much better than that. Or these things should in no way have happened to me, to someone I love.
Mm.
And it calls into question, like, who am I now?
Mm.
Because it kind of shakes at your core, right?
Yeah. I think there's so many reasons that you don't use your voice for a long time. I mean, I had my own reason that I never shared. I didn't share my writing until I was probably in my 30s. And I certainly didn't get on the
And you're
open
a
mic.
gifted writer. Oh my
Well,
gosh, you are a gifted writer.
yeah, but it is interesting. I didn't do it in my younger years, and I didn't, even with the corporate speaking, that came much later in the career. And in the younger years, so many things held me back. One was that I would get so emotional inside that I
Mhm.
couldn't actually have a level voice, so I was self-conscious about it. I would physically get red. I would feel angst. I would feel tight. And that creates fear in its own self, that I can't even get my quote, and I couldn't get the words that I wanted to say out in the right way to properly express myself, because the emotion was overcoming whatever it was that I wanted to say. So the clarity wasn't there, and I was still angry. I was still sad. And I didn't want to share with others anything really, because it was so personal. And I was sort of telling myself all the time, "Oh, things are not that bad. There's a million people worse than you, and there's all these reasons that you
Yeah,
you
and
put on
that's what
yourself."
we do to kind
Yeah,
of
there's this
do that
embarrassment or stigma
comparison
attached.
things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's there, different reasons that you do build the walls around yourself if you've had, these challenges. And I had so many hang-ups. I was from a council estate in a working class sort of home. My father passed away young, and my mum remarried a few times, and it was I didn't have a happy childhood in my eyes at all. And at school I was bullied as well. So at home was rough, at school was rough. And I couldn't even talk about that till maybe 2 or 3 years ago in a way that I could share put the spotlight on personal things. And I think when you do that, people realize, they might be looking and thinking, this is a corporate woman and she's a best-selling author and she's this or she's that. And I hadn't shared anything other than that facade, and sort of mask that you put on to be this sort of confident woman. and underneath that's not what's there. You know, there's all of these cracks inside. And now when I talk, I share the cracks. I don't try and share the confidence side at all. I share the cracks and the vulnerability and the truth and the real heart of, you know, the topic from sometimes a personal perspective, and then usually it gets into questions or discussions. And sometimes when you do that yourself, people are a little bit more open to opening up about their circumstances as well. But it's been a very soft journey, not, you know, wasn't sort of, you know, in a sudden eureka moment. It's been a real journey through life, really, to get to this point.
And see, and you just answered another question that I was going to ask, which was, triggers that we
Mm.
can recognize or be mindful of, that we're getting pulled back into our pain rather than into moving forward ourselves, or if we're, in an area where we're speaking publicly, to move our audience forward. So yeah, all of those things, the angst, the tightness of the throat and whatnot. So those are all triggers. Are there any other triggers though, while we're on this topic? Are there any other triggers that we would want to be mindful of, that, in using our voice, that we're getting pulled backwards rather than maintaining, I guess, our peace or whatever level of resolve that we're at that moment?
Yeah, I guess for everyone it would also be different. I mean, I have my own, and I've only in the last year or two also learned to really recognize them, and then handle myself differently. You know, speaking too fast, and you know, speaking with anger, and coming off topic, and you know, getting you know, too directive about something rather than, you know, um,
Mm.
get, you know, keeping on topic and things like that. But in the large part with me, it's sort of physical on the body, and they're much harder to, you know, control than what you're saying, because you can prep what you want to say to a bit of a certain extent. You can't always handle as easily what your body does and how your body reacts. So for me,
Ah,
absolutely, it's the red face and the stomach goes, and I get this huge sort of like tightness of energy. I actually had a lady coach me for 3 days, would you believe, on how to loosen this knot in my stomach. And she
oh,
taught me
wow.
breathing techniques, and she taught me a way to go on a stage, whether it be for a corporate speech or something to do with the writing, or I do a lot of press interviews and media work. And she taught me ways to spend as much time on body preparation as on what you want to say in your research. And I do that now. I've been doing that for quite a
Wow.
while, and it's amazing what it can do. And for me, she said my energy was just like this huge sort of, you know, just massive energetic flow of both positive and negative energy, just crazy energy from, you know, from everything that I feel like I want to say, but can't always say it in a way that's helpful because of the pain and your hang-ups. So she taught me how to handle that in a calm way before I have a conversation. And I have now learned to be able to be a better speaker. I still have a long way to go as a speaker, but I'm a much better, authentic speaker with, I guess, more in purpose around what I want to say, than being overshadowed by what the body is doing and just, you know, subconsciously telling me to do. It was the best
Wow.
3 days ever, actually, of training. You know, you know, everyone's done a mountain of training courses. That was a really good one.
That's
Mm.
amazing. I have
Yeah.
never heard of that. But I mean,
Mm.
that is a good point, though. Prepare your body as much as your
Yeah.
research, because we know that even when someone's in denial about something, or even if they're repressing a memory, the body is the sure tell. It
Yeah.
gives us signals, and we can choose to either ignore them. There are times, of course, when we don't know why our bodies are responding in a certain way. And, I think it's only nature to either, want to bring it to submission
Mm.
because,
Yeah.
it goes back to I'm better than this, or get it together, get it under control,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not, or either to think that there's something wrong with us and maybe we need more training.
Mm,
Or maybe we need, another year of therapy or whatever the case may be. And
yeah.
it's like, it's none of those, right? It's
No,
just,
yeah, exactly. And there's imposter syndrome is the other one. You know, this sort of
ah,
comparing yourself to other speakers or other women or other business women or other writers, whatever
yeah,
your lane is, comparing yourself to the best of the best and, sort of clipping your own wings and getting caught up in, I'm not a good enough speaker or I'm not good enough at sharing, this particular topic and you're sort of holding yourself back with those things. So I try and coach a little bit on that as well to say, you're your own person and you've got your own gifts to bring to the world. And, comparing yourself to anybody is, no two people are the same. So
right.
again, there's just so much sort of mental work involved, I think, in moving from a point of pain to a point of difference and a point of, helpful recovery that you've got to always deal with yourself first. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in your own emotions before you can sort of
Yeah.
help anyone else. Mm.
Now, piggybacking on that, though, is another important question, because I'm sure people think about this. Maybe they know that they can lend their voice and that they can use their voice to help someone.
Mm.
But if they say something, then that means you know something about me that I wish
Mm.
no one knew, yet alone happened.
Mm.
And so, how would someone who desires to use their voice, they've done the work, they desire to use their voice to the benefit of others, but the very real issue is once I say this, they're going to look at me differently.
Mm.
And
I
that can
think it
be a
has, yeah.
huge hurdle to
Mm.
get over, and it keeps many people silent. Now, there is,
Yeah.
let me preface that a little bit. There is such a thing still, even in the days of social media, there is such a thing still as TMI, too much information, and
Mm.
also personal business. But for the
Mm.
person who is desiring to use their voice, something is compelling them to speak about whatever situation they went through, whatever experience that they have. How do they get over that hurdle?
I think if there are concerns about saying something that you're going to regret and you don't want in the public domain, then there's a certain choice that you make whether you want to share those things. But I think there's when you're using your voice to sort of deal with your pain, there's sort of a bit of a difference, I think, in speaking to try and overcome your own pain, and because you have to get it out of your body and you've got to share it, and there's some therapeutic needs to do that because it has to be said, versus wanting to say something in the public domain that you believe may help others in what you're saying. So there's sort of, using your voice for your own personal therapy versus using your voice to share with others for the good of others. And I think knowing the difference is the key. And a lot of people don't see the difference or realize the difference. So everything is just coming out in this sort of huge spin of words, and it's all coming out sort of muddled together, which is part of the journey. As you're trying to get your words out. But I think it is being mindful. Once it is out there in the domain, it's out there, and you can't take it back when it's in
Right,
public domain. So, and
right.
and sometimes you can share your story and get it out there without sharing, warts and all, every line of detail and things
Of
that are
course.
not that useful to someone else. So. I think it's that understanding of what you really need to say to try and help your own healing and deal with it versus what is going to be useful for someone else and not and you can't take it back.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So how would a person, what guidelines have you yourself used if, that's the case, but how would a person determine what should be said versus what should be left unsaid or kept private?
Mm.
Like, what are some guidelines you
Yeah.
use?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I always have the rule that once it's out there, are you happy for, think of the top three people in your life, and the three that you are the most sort of I suppose close to or whatever. So it might be it might be a parent, it might be a partner, it might be whoever. Are you comfortable with them reading it? And then are you comfortable with workplaces reading it? And if the press went viral with this tomorrow and it was across the world, would you be okay with
Mm,
that?
okay.
And if you're okay with that, then you know it's going to come out there. But I try and more probe, to be honest, less about what they're saying, more about why they're saying it. So why is there a need there to bring a message to the world about whatever that message is? What's the real driver behind the message? What's the purpose? What is the outcome they want to achieve by sharing something? And is what's it what yeah, exactly. And then you end up in the conversation about what they hope to achieve from that particular sort of spoken word piece or
Yeah.
vocal session. And that's a really good conversation, a rich conversation, less about what you're going to say, more about why you want to say something, whatever that something is, and exploring that further so they really get to grips with the meaning behind their words. And I often as well try and move them away from the words they want to say and more the feeling they want to leave the audience with, whomever the
Mm,
audience is. If it's one person, if it's 100 people, if it's 1,000 people, what do you want them to walk away from? Not and forget about the words, not the words and the one key line you want to leave them with, but
right.
what feeling do you want them to walk out the room with? Is it one that you want them to walk out and go and change the world, or you want them to feel the stab in the heart on what you've just said, or you want them to feel whatever it is? And again, you get a lot of clarity in thinking when you think about those couple of things. Why do I want to say this, and what feeling do I want to leave people with? It changes the way you think about what you say.
Yeah, it
And then
changes the
the audience.
conversation.
Yeah. It definitely changes the conversation.
Okay.
um yeah, and you become less worried about the words, and the words really start to take on a new meaning and reason for you saying them, and you begin to get a little bit of clarity through thinking that way. Mm.
You know, there's a saying, and you've probably heard it, especially as you're a public speaker. Um, Never tell a story without making a point.
Mm. Yep.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in business too, you want to leave people with two or three key messages and those kind of things. And I do still always think that way. What one thing do I want to leave, the reader with, or the listener with, or the audience with? But I always think, what feeling do I want them to leave with as well? I do it in it might be a two-line poem, it might be an epic novel, it might be anything in between. But I always, at the end of writing a piece, I always think, oh, okay, how's that going to make someone feel when they
Yeah.
read that? And you know and am I okay with that? Was that the intent, that I want to make someone feel angry, sad, happy, funny, whatever? Yeah, it's not just the words.
Of course, of course, it's the actions associated with that. Um,
Yeah, I think
what
poetry is
if
good for
you
that, actually. Yeah. Poetry is a really good writing. Poetry is a really good writing form for it, because you have an obligation to use as few words as possible
Yeah.
to get your message across, and it's a clever way of writing because of that. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because Cube, oh my gosh, to
Mm,
anyone listening to this, Kelly Van Nelson, Cube, you must read that poem. She even did it in audio format for
mm,
you via YouTube. Look up Cube by Kelly Van Nelson. You will be thinking about that for the rest of the day, trust me.
mm,
So you've processed, you've taken time to recover, you've taken time to walk your own path, and you've spoken not only factually, truthfully, and with empathy, yet someone twists your words, someone
mm,
takes offense to your words, someone has the audacity to claim that it didn't happen.
mm.
how can the speaker, the person using their voice, not internalize that, not take that upon themselves and still continue using their voice and moving forward?
Mm. Yeah. And the reality is sometimes those things do happen, and that's, that is unfortunately the reality of life. And I've had it happen, if I'm in press interviews or something like that, and they might use sort of two sentences of what you said in a 2-hour conversation, and they're weaved into a larger piece, supporting a
With
story with a particular angle.
the
Yeah,
dot,
yeah,
dot, dot.
yeah. Exactly. And
It's
and
like
you
that
actually
dot,
did
dot,
say
dot
that
was
sentence.
45 minutes, dude.
Exactly, yeah, and I have had that happen where you have said the sentence, but it was said in the context of a broader piece of communication, and it's been put into a
Yes.
different piece. I guess try and I try and draw a bit of a line in the sand on what you can and can't control. So everybody's got a different perspective on life and have got different viewpoints, and you're not going to get alignment with everybody. So that I do remind myself of that sometimes, to cut myself a break, that you can't keep everybody happy, and
Of course.
you are always going to get people that like your work, don't like your work, like what you say, or read into something a different perspective. And that's also okay. One of the things I actually like is different thinking. I often sort of invite it a little bit to
Yeah.
say, I want to be challenged. So I'm going to share something with you. If you've got a different viewpoint, I would absolutely love to hear it, because that the reality of the world today is there are so many viewpoints that we don't hear enough from, and
Yes.
I'd love to have the conversation about a different viewpoint. And it softens the approach, and people then may still share their viewpoint, but in a less confrontational and attack manner, and more, all right, this lady's open to the conversation, and she doesn't think she's this is the only way, and that she knows it all. So I
Yeah.
often invite it. I don't sort of get too scared or fearful of that conversation, because maybe their viewpoint is a good one,
Yes.
and maybe I have overlooked something. And sometimes if I actually acknowledge that I have, to say, yeah, you're right, and I hadn't thought of that, and I love that we've spoken about that, and I will, actually bring that perspective in to my way of thinking and delivery and thought process. And I just so appreciate you sharing that, because it's something I hadn't considered before. And
And that's
people
great that you even
like,
allow that to happen, though,
yeah,
to be open to
yeah,
that. It's like a conversation, not a debate. There's a difference.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Awesome.
contrasts. I love different opinions, and I love different opposites, and you know, yeah, just different seeing the world through different eyes is a
Yeah.
beautiful gift that we all have. And we only have one set of eyes, and there are so many others. So I open myself up to that, actually. And if I come unstuck, I just say it. I'm I don't know what to respond with that. And but I'll say, but I'm going to have a sleepless night thinking about it, and I really am glad that I will, because I want to consider that. Mm.
There's
Yeah, not be
a,
fearful.
a scripture that says, the way of a man seems right until his brother comes alongside and questions him.
Mm,
And,
mm,
we don't do enough, even though we're connected on social media. Oftentimes, we're not as connected offline in our real lives. And
yeah,
so to have the opportunity for a conversation or a
mm,
different viewpoint, even if the result is to walk away
mm,
agreeing to disagree,
yep,
at least there's
yeah,
understanding. It's not saying that you have to adopt someone else's viewpoint, but I think that we learn more about each other when we are open to the ideal of another viewpoint,
mm,
you know, because that's
yeah,
part of the beauty of humanity. Like you said, we have one set of eyes. Think
mm,
about how many millions of things that others have seen,
yeah.
you know?
That's exactly. Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
right. You don't have to agree, and I think acknowledging you don't have to agree on it, but let's just hear each other's perspective, and
Yeah.
better understand that perspective. Then it's a much nicer way to share differences of opinions in a
Oh,
in a good
yeah.
way.
Oh,
Mm,
yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you how many of those conversations have been had in my personal life around tea. Um,
Yeah.
and just the people that come together and the discussions that would have not taken place in any other setting. So, yeah, yeah, that's a great thing. Great thing.
Mm.
Final words of wisdom for women
Cool.
who are
I
using
think
their voice.
I always my favorite sort of saying is only you can spread your wings and fly. So
Mm,
what I mean by that is your own personal journey is yours and only yours. And each time you want to fly, it's on you to do so. And you know other people can clip your wings, you can clip your wings,
right.
but ultimately it's down to your own personal self. So I think you have to keep enriching your soul, yourself, and fulfilling yourself in finding joy, gratitude, happiness in your own journey, and then you can spread your wings and fly. It doesn't matter who tries to clip them. I firmly believe it doesn't. It doesn't matter the obstacles and who is putting roadblocks in your way. You can work on your way of spreading those wings.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the way that I look at
Fly
life.
higher.
Oh, fly higher and go for
Yeah.
it, and take baby steps and to get towards your goals, and don't be fearful to spread your wings and go for it, because the biggest person that holds you back is yourself. That's what
So
I
true.
what I always feel. That's generally the person who is holding you back.
So
Yeah, so
true.
that's my phrase. Only you can spread your wings and fly. Go for it. Don't clip your own wings.
I love
Mm.
that. I love that. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us today. This was a very enlightening discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for talking to me. Thank you.
And I hope you found today's conversation just as insightful and helping you to better wield your voice as well. I invite you to become part of this growing platform for women that we are building within her company. I look forward to your feedback, not only on this segment, but on other segments in our series. So, once again, my name is Chris Vaughn. This is In Her Company.
Thank you.